We move to item 8, which is local board input, and there's none received there. Extraordinary items, none that I know of there. So we go straight to the first business of the day, is the Kiwi Rail update, and we have Dave Gordon, the Chief Operating Officer. And the purpose of this report, of course, is to receive an update from Kiwi Rail on the Auckland program, which of course is very dear to the hearts of many councillors served by the rail network. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Just to introduce on my left, Gwyneth McLeod. She is responsible for developing, in partnership with Auckland Transport, the long-term network plan. There's 4 things I wanted to cover off today, councillors. May I just have an indication of time, Chair?
So I think, Dave, we're given in the order of 10 to 15 minutes for these presentations. Yep. That was the brief. Thank you.
So there's 4 things I wanted to cover off, bring to councillors' attentions, where we're at with the passenger rail, some of the freight issues that are becoming more apparent, where we're heading with the program business case, and finally just some reminder of hot topics. This pack is, this slide presentation's in the pack, I believe, so I won't read the slide per se, but it just answers the question, will we be ready for City Rail Link opening? And the answer, there's some bits and pieces, but the basic answer is yes, we will. We're making good progress on the jobs that we're doing. There's a few issues that are outstanding, which is there, and we can look through that. There's one, there's in Papakura Pukikoe, working with Counties Energy on where the best place for a substation is. Drury West Station, there is some litigation, which is currently just closed off, and it may be actually more sensible to rebuild the Newmarket line after City Rail Link opens rather than before. So there's bits and that's because of the level of disruption. So there's bits and pieces that you would expect in a major project, but I think, summary, we're travelling pretty well. 2 remaining uncertainties. One is the Henderson Station, in particular how we might integrate that with the rail network rebuild, and I understand councillors are considering that next week as part of the overall funding request for the CRL project, so I won't go into that here. And there's the never-ending issue associated with the resources for signalling and the trade-offs within Auckland and between other sites in New Zealand as to how to get there. But overall, I think we're travelling well. We're talking about the rail network rebuild. We are on track. We will be handing back the first section that we took over. That is the section from Otahuhu through to Newmarket. We said we'd get it back on the 20th of March, and we will. It'll be done, and we'll hand it back on time. And I want to say thanks to all the people who were disrupted by that. If it's any small comfort, so were we, our officers by Ellerslie Station. But we did it, we've got it on time, and we move on to the next area. So, and I was really impressed. I took a train ride yesterday, stopped at a couple of the Eastern Line stations. There are 80 people out there handing out the pamphlets, giving the information, so through there. But I've got 2 pictures on there just to sort of ask the question, you know, we still get occasionally, why can't you do it at night? Can you just sort of do it between trains? That's on the left-hand side. That's the type of work we're actually doing, digging it out from the basis. It's just not the stuff you can do between trains. On the right-hand side is, that's the type of plant we have deployed for this work. Again, you just can't drop it in and then drop it out. It is a major construction. So as I said, we finished the blue on the 20th of March, as we said we would. We go on to, I guess you'd call it cat yellow, I'm not sure, but anyway, from Waitemata through to the Sylvia Park. That is our most difficult piece of work, and it has the most amount of dig out to do because it is, in fact, the oldest part of the network. But we're making progress. Talking a little bit about freight, because the debate does tend to be dominated by passenger, but moving freight around the city is critical to its well-being as well. And the point is that in New Zealand and in Auckland, we operate a mixed network, which means freight trains and passenger trains coexist on the same lines. If you go overseas, more and more cities solve this by simply putting more lines in and separating the two. It's a rough rule of thumb that the shared network is about 20% less efficient than a sole network for passengers, thereabouts. So a big thing really, what drives the freight task in Auckland in particular, and the thing that dominates is the, what scenario you have around ports of Auckland. If it stays, certain things have to happen. If it goes, different things have to happen. But the implications for the commuter service are, as I say, immense. So at the moment, Auckland has circa 800,000 TEU, which is a measure of its 20-foot container, international measure, and about 100,000 of those we take on rail. So if we look at what happens if Ports of Auckland stay, which is what it's doing at the moment, let's say it's 15 years, we can move around about 250 to 300,000 containers on rail. There's things we'll need to invest in, people and plant and equipment, but that's it. We could not take any more than that by rail. So the growth of the port, everything else would have to be handled by truck unless there's considerable network investment. So there's a limit to what we can do. We can do better than we're doing, but we can't solve the trucking issue. But if Ports of Auckland stays, and people say we want to have more rail service to the port, to move beyond that sort of 250 to 300,000 TEU, we need to put a third track in around the east. And to be clear, what that means, we would have to go into the water across Hobson Bay, Ōrākei Basin, Pariwa Creek. We'd have to do a 500 metre tunnel, and we'd have to take open space, commercial land acquisitions right throughout the rest of the corridor. So it is a big investment and a big hurdle if you're going to do that. Separate Westfield Junction, we want to do that anyway. We need to expand the yard, we need to get away to get better roading into the yard. And the fact of that is, really the bottom line, if port volumes subsequently end, then most of that investment is of nil value to the commuter network. So it's a very binary decision if we want to take more stuff by rail out of the port beyond the sort of $250,000 to $300,000. And I've just got up on that screen the model as it sort of sits at the moment. You've got a big Ports of Auckland, a big port of Tauranga. We've got Southdown Inland Hub, that is New Zealand's third biggest container port. We've got the development at Ruakura being done by Tainui. That will be a major thing. And you've got a relatively modest North Port. But that's what you have to do if you want a rail-served port in Auckland over the long term. The counterfactual is that the port goes. And I've just done a quick assumption about, let's say 50% of the traffic goes to Tauranga and 50% of it goes north. Who knows what that mix might be. The train program to Tauranga takes approximately 450,000 TEUs. So that's our current train program. So we would have to put double the train program down to Tauranga for the volume and put the equivalent of the current train volume up to North Port. So what do you need to do that? And I've got my schematic there. You've got a big North Port, a big port of Tauranga. Probably you'd need a big inland hub somewhere up in the Huapai, etc. area, and you've got a much more modest Ports of Auckland. So it's still a major investment to do that. Either option is not free. You get a better case for the third and fourth mains to increase Tauranga volumes. Still need to do some work on Southdown. You'll need, as I said, a freight hub to the north, and obviously you've got to build a Marsden Point link, otherwise it's not going anywhere near that port, and investment in Northport. But the thing I really wanted to draw councillors' attention to is the point sort of in the middle way, which says brings Southdown Avondale into play. And this is something that's really emerging from the work that Gwyneth has been leading, and how important Southdown Avondale is to Auckland Transport's future as a whole. So just to anchor yourselves, councillors, you can see the existing network is in red. The green is a long-term aspiration of the light rail, and the blue line is running from Southdown to Avondale. So effectively, it's a parallel trans-isthmus crossing in place. So it's got a dotted line because no one knows quite where it fits in terms of operationally. So just talk about it. It's designated. We've actually owned it since the 1940s to do precisely the task, which was to take freight rail out of central Auckland. So at the moment, every train that goes north has to leave Southdown, actually head into the city, turn left at Newmarket and go back up through that way. So it goes all the way through the commuter network, climbs a steep hill, and one coming back does the same. So every train that goes through, freight train goes through there, means at least 2 passenger trains don't, because it just takes more time to go through there. So you can see that the more that goes through there, the more you undermine some of the targets that Auckland Transport have for running a regular passenger network. And bluntly, if half of Ports of Auckland tonnage goes to Northport, we would totally destroy the public transport aspirations of it if it all had to drive through Newmarket. We'd just clunk up too much time. So and that was what the people in the 40s actually recognised when they designated and started buying the land for Southdown Avondale. So the question has always been, when? When does it happen? Because if it's built and freight goes through there, then the entire inner circle of Auckland area can be metro solely traffic. So you get a much more intense service in the middle. Now, Tommy Parker and his team are presenting after this, and so there's no surprise that Tommy's seen my presentation. They need to use the corridor, and we have to find ways to share. Kiwi Rail is committed to finding a way to share the corridor with ALR, with light rail, if it is to proceed. But the coda to that is, if it is proceeding and we are to share the corridor, then there is no way we can come along later and do the earthworks, etc., needed for conventional rail. It has to be done at the same time. You couldn't, I don't think the community would take 2 major earthworks projects in quick succession going through their community. And secondly, there's certain things being built, etc., that you can only do once. So there's a position on Southdown Avondale as a whole within Auckland's transport network has to be made concurrently with the light rail decisions. And there needs to be 2 tracks alongside each other. And if I just, hopefully this takes me back, I go back a couple of slides, you end up with the paradox that you build a rail line for freight, which will be busy, but not that busy. So why wouldn't you run passenger services on it? And you start ending up with potentially a passenger service, just sort of imagining Henderson, say, to Panmure or Sylvia Park, Glen Innes or something like that. So there's quite a rich number of issues to be brought into line when we think about this, because you wouldn't build it just for freight. That would be madness, because you've got capacity to run passengers on it. So there's a lot of hard work to be done, and I know the light rail team are consulting on this at the present moment. But the big thing about the program business case that Gwyneth has been leading, it has brought much more sharply into focus councillors and Auckland Transport. What role does Southdown Avondale play, and when? Because our predecessors in the 40s had foresight. They reserved it then, so when do you push the trigger? So I'll move on to that business plan, led by Gwyneth. Really 2 points. To date, we've focused on, well, what do you need to build? What do you need to build for it all? And we're now moving on to the different question, well, that seems like a lot to do in one thing. What compromises do you make in order to make that happen? And then the follows, how long you're willing to be living with compromised growth. So there's actually not too many surprises coming out of this business case. I think we've been talking for a long time. You'll need to upgrade the network to 9 cars, for 9 cars. You'll need to change the signalling system to a different system for those 9 cars. You're going to need a program of level crossings, separations. You're going to need 4 mains heading south from Westfield to Pukekohe, and you'll have to grade separate Westfield Junction. A lot of these things have been around for a while, been said, it's just been proven again. But the 2 things that the plan has done with Gwyneth's leadership is, as I say, brought very sharply into focus the role of Southdown Avondale, and also brought much more sharply into focus that the emission drivers, the drivers for emissions, is pulling the need for investment much closer than expected. So the process from here in is, as it says at the top, we've got to get it signed off amongst ourselves. So we still don't agree on a few bits ourselves, and then a gradual through officer level consultation with decision makers, etc., etc. But this heads up. This is the direction of travel. Finally, I'd like to close on two issues, and again, it's probably repeating what I said last time. There is an affordability issue coming up here. The track access charges that are currently paid will not be enough to sustain the level of investment needed to keep the new assets in good condition. And those costs, at the moment, the model says, well, AT and KiwiRail are the only two users, so AT pay its share according to a percentage of use, which is not really disputed. KiwiRail pay your share. My gut is telling me that the bill for that will reach, I haven't presented a bill to anyone yet, but it's going to look unaffordable. There is, and this is not a different conversation I'm having with Greater Wellington, same thing. Can the local authorities, local councils, afford to sustain the infrastructure that's being invested in here in the rail? And it's a conversation we have to have, both at central and local government level. So again, it's heads up, that's where it's going. The other issue, and I'll close on, is my personal favourite, level crossings. You have far too many of them, and the busier it gets, the more congested your roads are going to be. Ourselves and AT, the program business case is get on and do it, which is really fine. It's easy to say, but harder to fund. AT is actually leading the thinking about how to do this and what the solutions would be, because it's a road and rail problem, but the solution lies in fixing road, and that's not our expertise, but it is AT's expertise. But I just put on that slide, there's nothing to suggest that the current sort of split of accountabilities between, as we stand at the moment, will get the level of cut-through necessary to deal with this problem. It is a massive investment, so it really is posing the question, would a special purpose entity, which is what they've done in Melbourne and others, be the way to pursue this? Now, the AT's business case is designed to achieve that. So thank you. Chair, questions?
Thanks very much, Dave, and certainly your presentation evoked a bit of response here in terms of questions. Councillor Henderson, first up.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions. So with CRL now delayed, has KiwiRail revisited the timeframes for network improvements for the CRL to try and reduce disruption for users?
We've been working on, we have had for a while a fairly good view of what that delay might be. Our program has been based around those types of dates. So we're doing it as quickly as we can, but we have, and we will be, as I say, we will be finished before CRL opens, but I can't do it much quicker than I'm doing it.
Question, and it's on your slide around funding for the Henderson station. Is that in addition to the announced $1 billion cost increase?
It's part of that package. I might ask Barry. It's part of that package, I believe.
Yeah. Through the Chair, that's correct, and we'll bring that to councillors next week. So we'll pick it up then.
Absolutely essential. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we have in this order Councillor Turner, Ferry, Walker, Baker, Bartley, Darby, Lee and Newman. Councillor Turner, I told you they were interested.
Thank you. Wow, is all I can say. You said 20% less efficient when both services are running. Is that for both services equally?
What it basically means is that a freight train just takes up more time than a passenger train does, and particularly if a freight train is crossing from one track to another, it consumes time paths. It's actually not 20% less efficient for the freight because it's consuming the time it's consumed, but it's less efficient for the passenger because it's having time taken away.
Okay, and there's no change to that when you're talking about the CBD and getting in and out of the ports?
Well, no, exactly the same thing happens. That the more we rail service the port, the more it takes away from passenger opportunities.
Okay. And I'd just make just one statement, just one comment. Electrification and double tracking as far as Helensville, just that was never mentioned, and Is it thought of?
Well, I think it's obviously been considered, and whether it's Helensville or Huapai as a first stop, it's not in the current thinking of the plan.
Okay, thank you. And one more thing. Per metre, the build cost of track in this project, how does it benchmark to the cost per metre of track on a global scale?
I'm not going to give you a terrible answer. It depends. I can build it cheaper on the Canterbury Plains than I can in Auckland.
I was just compared, how are we tracking with the cost of construction?
Well, cost of construction in New Zealand's at pretty insane levels at the moment, and we've got the same issue. I still think we're efficient. Because we trade off every time between keeping services running and building. So the greater the access KiwiRail has, the more efficient our build is. But it's a bit like, at some point you get to the hotel that runs efficiently with no guests. So we've got,
Is there something council can do to help reduce those outrageous costs?
Truth is no, not really. You're fighting against global pressure.
Councillor Ferry?
Thank you. Two questions. First one follows on well from Ken actually, is around the construction costs. Are they likely to come down in the future or indeed continue to go up? Because it's all very well to say they cost a lot more now, but if they're going to cost a lot more in the future, now looks pretty cheap. And then I've got one other short question.
Well, I think the answer to the first one is I wish I knew. There are signs that some of the absolute peak of pricing is coming off, but the truth is we've had 2 cyclones and resources will be potentially pulled away. New Zealand is a fixed quantity of construction. So I would hope that it doesn't continue on its same trajectory, but I think we are facing a construction shortage for a while.
Thank you. The other question is just in relation to the rail network rebuild specifically. I'm keen to know, there was some, and this might be detail that needs to come back, the mobility issues around people who can't take a rail replacement bus instead of a train for a variety of reasons. How has that gone with stage 1, and are there any changes planned for future phases as a result of how that's gone?
I'm going to have to pass the question,
Yeah,
because it's the service and the replacement service is provided by AT,
Yep.
and they are better qualified to talk about that than I would be, Councillor.
Okay, I'll follow that up with them. Thank you.
Councillor Walker?
The massive amounts of money being poured into light rail and the substitutive role in large part of Southdown Avondale. How soon can the council receive some modelling and some information that you're suggesting that goes to that? And also, how soon can we receive some information around the passenger service relationships, the 20% decline you mentioned that is obviously going to impact on the passenger services CRL? And how quickly can we receive some information around the costs that you're raising that go to our affordability?
As pointed out in slides, we intend to take this proposed plan through our respective boards and committee, being Auckland Transport and KiwiRail. We need to build that to build some certainty. There are points of divergence between us still at the moment, and the intention would be going into the latter part of this year, making that information available across the lot.
And just a related question around Southdown to Avondale. Because that corridor is not being used for anything else, I'm assuming that delivery of that is much simpler than retrofitting things elsewhere.
I'll get the light rail team are better to talk about that than me at the moment, but yeah, there'll be areas which are simpler. A big chunk of it just runs parallel to State Highway 20. through Mount Roskill, and it's a greenway. However, it also runs right through the core of Onehunga, and I can't imagine that would be any easier than it is at the moment. So it'll be a mix.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. So we've got Councillors Baker, Bartley and Darby coming up as the next three.
Thanks, Chair. G'day, Dave. So just two questions for you. The first one is on the network improvements. I commute every day from Papakura on the train. It's about a 3.5 hour daily commute. People coming from Pukekohe currently, you add 40 minutes on a very good day. It's a 40-minute bus journey to get to the train at Papakura. My concern is in regards to the Southern Line closure, Papakura to Puhenui. Auckland Transport's ability to provide services is directly connected by the process which you undertake to fix your rail. So I guess what are you doing to mitigate the possible 5 to 6 hour commute that will be required, or the inability of Auckland Transport to actually have enough buses that currently the peak time morning trains are standing room only on a 6-car unit, standing room only by the time we get to Manarewa. So what are you doing in terms of enabling Auckland Transport to be able to cater for the requirement of people to travel? That commute time is probably shorter. My commute time is shorter than me trying to drive, and so because of the works on the motorway. So, you know, we've got a perfect storm here, and so my question is, what are you doing to work with Auckland Transport to try and enable them to provide the services that the people of Auckland expect?
Challenging question. I think first response is that we plan with Auckland Transport what the substitution services are. At the end of the day, they have to make the call on what is doable and achievable. But the one thing I cannot offer up is to say, oh, somehow we'll manage to just squeeze some commuter trains through the gaps for a period of time. I would be misleading this council to say I could. You're right, it is a perfect storm, and it is pretty ugly. But I have to deliver post-City Rail Link a network that will endure in perpetuity. And we are basically taking a big chunk of pain now. And we'll do our best to mitigate, but I cannot promise at all that somehow we'll sneak the odd train through. I'm ripping it up and fixing it properly once and for all.
It's going to be nasty. So my last question is in regards to the southern train station, so the 3 southern stations. What is the current position and the funding in regards to the provision? And so we've talked about a lot with Kiwi Rail when I was on the local board in regards to, I guess, the standards of those stations, and currently we've got Pairata and Drury Central nailed down, probably work started or thereabouts. What I hear is that you're prepared to, you're wanting to deliver 3 with less, with less offerings than has been sort of expected. Why are you are you prepared to do 2 fully spec'd stations and hold off on Drury West, which is there is a legal challenge to the process. What is your position on that, and why would you not deliver 2 at full specs and look at Drury West in the future?
Well, you correctly point out that ourselves and AT do have a slightly different view on this matter. I'm funded by the Crown to build 3, so to a certain extent, I don't have a choice but to build 3. I do want to do Pairata's underway. It looks really, it's great out there. Ditto Drury Central, as you say. Drury West is the litigation completed last week. The challenge to me is somehow assuming that the money for Drury West will come along later. You've got a bird in the hand at the moment, which is some money. Why would you think if we said, oh, we'll just do 2 perfectly? This is the discussion I'm having with AT, so we'll do these 2 much better and we'll leave Drury West to later. Well, who's paying for later?
I know what the communities would like.
Councillor Bartley?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kiwi Rail, for being here and for the heads up. I wanted to ask about, I want to say, please do not rip up Onehunga. Already communities, residents are concerned hearing from what Auckland Light Rail is saying about the two options. So what are your other options then besides going through residential communities that have been built up since your 1940s tracks were put in there?
Well, I think probably Tommy Parker and others in the light rail will talk about what their options are. We either go on that corridor or we follow a light rail corridor, which is in a different area. But I think the one thing is not going to be sustainable is having two running through there. So what choice do you do? It is a thing to the community, but it has been there since the 1940s. Now, you live next to these things and you think they're never going to come, but it has been there since the 1940s. So it is a challenge for Onehunga residents, as will be light rail down Dominion Road and or wherever it's running. I can't answer your question in the sense of saying, we'll just go elsewhere. There is only one elsewhere, which is whatever the other light rail corridor is. That's the only other elsewhere there is.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bartley. Councillor Darby, Lee, Newman, Fletcher and Foley, the remaining questioners.
Yep, good. Thank you, Kiwi Rail. The Kiwi Rail fits into the system along with international air travel. It fits into the system like road and coastal shipping, etc. Just in terms of the review of that's underway, that the Minister of Transport, Minister for Auckland is undertaking, and that review of that freight and supply chain system, and how Kiwi Rail fits in it. Can you just articulate maybe the three key points, topics that you discussed in your submission to that review?
I would, but I honestly, I'm unprepared for that question, Councillor.
Okay.
But I think generally, the slide that we showed before is, where is the balance of the North Island export-import flow, Upper North Island export-import flow going? That is the greatest challenge.
Okay, just following up then, I appreciate that. Thanks, Dave. Just two quick ones. Just in terms of the issue that you raise at the Port of Auckland, both the Mayor and I would, and I'm sure many others would like to see a lot more movement of TEUs via rail. You're saying there are a series of constraints, not just one. Can you just elaborate on the port rail grid constraint, please? And where does responsibility for resolving that lie? Is it the port company or is it with Kiwi Rail on the port land? And who wears the bill for that?
Well, it is the port company. It is their rail grid. And it's abundantly clear that the rail grid is not set up well for an operation of a CT to port. It should be parallel to that of the container grid, not perpendicular to it. So that there'd be an investment required. We could get our volumes up quite a bit using the existing grid, but that's the investment. The next investment is just in rolling stock, just particular wagons and how through there. The other investment, as it grows, will be into Southdown. That's not necessarily immediate. The challenge is the fact that for every freight I put down there, I've taken out passengers. So that's the other investment. It's the opportunity foregone investment.
Okay, look, I'll probably unpack that a bit more offline. And finally, Chair, just in terms of Southdown, Avondale, or Southdown maybe just past Avondale, has Kiwi Rail looked at least an indicative business case for a full freight tunnel from Southdown through to Avondale?
Yeah, we'd looked a couple of years back at a tunnel. It's not current costed, and you really only start you get into a tunnel basically at the foot of the State Highway 20 heading up to Hillsborough. You could cut and cover through Onehunga a little bit, but there's no sort of tunnelling option right through Onehunga. That's the issue. But you sort of go in at the foot of State Highway 20, come out a bit before Mount Roskill would be the scale of tunnel through that area.
Yeah, and just in terms of resilience to your freight network, I mean, Auckland has a situation where we've got the freight working right on top of the passenger network, unlike many cities. So that resilience has been looked at in terms of that indicative business case if there was one for a freight tunnel.
Absolutely. So that's the work that Gwyneth has been leading with, in partnership with AT. Is what is the long-term investment? How do you get the optimum use of the network for both freight and passenger?
Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Thank you for the presentation, and your presentation is a timely reminder that there are other transport issues that should take our attention, time and money, not just cycleways. But in terms of the current track formation work, which is disruptive of passenger services, at the last briefing we were given, and in our other meetings, the message was Kiwi Rail was determined to sort out and fix the track formation issues throughout the network so that everything was A1, working as full capacity by the time of the opening of the CRL, which we now know is November 2025. Work began in June 2016. My question is, you mentioned, to me for the first time anyway, that there is yet another tranche of work which will take place after opening the CRL, focusing on Newmarket. Could you explain the nature of that work, please?
Sure. And at the moment, it's a possibility. The likely timetable from Newmarket through to the City Rail Link may be, on the Newmarket branch, may be reduced because instead you'll be going by Mount Eaton and through the tunnel. So it may be basically far less disruptive to wait until City Rail Link's opened to do the work in that area. It's not new work, it's the same work, it's just, is it better done before, is it better done afterwards? We'll probably reach a position on that in about a year's time when we've done the analysis to see what the impact is.
I won't spend too much time on that, but is this essentially new work, or was it work that you already scoped but decided to push it back?
Oh, it's a work already scoped, there's nothing new. And I think actually in the last presentation I did say that there were two that could potentially be after.
That's a bit of a concern. Now, the other point you make, could you put up the slide on the network itself, on the Avondale Southdown question, because I think this is strategically vital, not just for Auckland, but for Northland, for the upper North Island. And you also emphasise how interlinked rail is with ports, with plural ports. You can see the Avondale Southdown link is the mirror image of the Eastern Line, and it was designed that way. Unfortunately, never built, but it obviously coming to the stage where it will need to be built for a whole lot of reasons. Are you telling us that Auckland Light Rail Limited have now plans to use that corridor for light rail as well as heavy rail?
It's always been, and again Tommy will confirm when he comes on, but sharing of that corridor has always been on the cards, and it makes sense to share the corridor if we can. Put 4 tracks through the corridor.
Well, it hasn't been on the cards, to be honest with you. Light rail's original plan was to go to the airport and to go to Commuter, but we're leaving that to one side.
No, from Roskill down to Hillsborough, I'm pretty confident it was always sharing the corridor, councillor.
There may have been no official moves on that. I'm aware unofficially that AT wanted to buy that corridor from Kiwi Rail a few years ago, and Kiwi Rail quite wisely rebuffed that. But leave that aside. It seems to me strange that we would have a heavy rail corridor which is problematic in terms of having to share with a light rail corridor. Wouldn't you, light rail is for passengers, wouldn't it be more sensible for heavy rail passengers, such as the people who'll be using the very expensive CRL, to be able to use that corridor on a standard train? That's what it was acquired for, as a mirror image of the line, the Eastern Line.
I'm probably getting, well, I am getting outside of the thing. We're sharing a corridor, councillor, but we're not sharing tracks.
Councillor Lee, might I suggest that that our next presentation take this issue up, and I just would like to let members know that we are a bit time constrained for the...
I'll leave it at there, but this is obviously a critical strategic question for Auckland and for North Auckland. And it's news to me that there's a real problem because Light Rail Limited, which hasn't built 1 centimetre of track yet, wants to use this Avondale Southdown line.
I'll really make the point, though, we don't see it as a problem.
So we're time constrained in that the light rail presentation has to be over by 12:30. So we've got 3 more questioners. So if we could perhaps just expedite it a bit, folks, so we can start that by 12 o'clock, so we at least have half an hour with the light rail. Okay, thank you. Councillor Newman, Fletcher and Councillor Foley.
Good morning. The question I had, 2 quick questions. Following on from Councillor Baker, I mean, how settled is the decision in relation to the 3 average versus 2 good for Drury Central and Pairata stations? There's a dispute in relation to Drury West, but the incentive would be on the developer to get that Drury West station up to the standard that's going to work for the developer in terms of the marketing of their development. So I'm just wondering, you know, how settled is Kiwi Rail on this? I mean, if it's a matter of funding, you would go back to Crown, I presume, or you'd put the onus back on the developer to pay for the cost of that. If Kiwi Income Property can develop Sylvia Park, it proves that the developer, if they see the market potential, will actually pay the contribution. But I don't like the idea of shortchanging 2 good stations in order to deliver 3 very average stations.
Well, it's an unresolved issue between AT and ourselves, and I think it raised it at the last meeting. As I said, I am funded. I have a mandate from the Minister to build 3 stations. So it's not indeed it's not Kiwi Rail's decision to say no. Kiwi Rail can have discussions with the ministers about it, etc. But at the moment, I can't stand here and say, oh, we think 2 will be fine. And the essence of the debate is it's not like we're building terrible things there. There's some things that look okay, and I'm satisfied with the quality. But I know Auckland Transport are unhappy with the position we're taking.
Okay, well, I'm not sure if the discussions are taking place with the developer and the minister around this, but I'm not. I support Auckland Transport on this. The other question that I had was you've diplomatically avoided stating a figure, although you are saying that there is unaffordable in relation to the track access. So you must know what sort of costs we're talking about. What is that number that you deem to be unaffordable?
No, I won't give you that number because it's not properly developed. I guess I would put my statement on this. We have always had hard negotiations with Auckland Transport for the current level of fees on the basis that it's challenging their budget. This will be considerably greater than that. My expectation is that there will be a bigger pill to swallow. I have not yet put a proposal to Auckland Transport, so I can't do it in a public meeting because I haven't done it.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher?
Thank you, David, for an excellent presentation, and I want to thank Barry Potter and the Chair for putting this before us. I've felt for a long time, when Auckland Council, the legislation was put together, the government of the day in its wisdom decided to put Waka Kotahi or NZTA on the board, non-voting, of Auckland Transport, but didn't put Kiwi Rail or give Kiwi Rail that forced alignment in terms of discussion. So I really appreciate the opportunity that we have to have some insight into those challenges as we go forward. I've got a particular interest in grade separation, and I know that AT is leading the work on that. You have put up some slides, but could you speak in a little more depth on the importance of us actually coming to grips with the grade separation, particularly with CRL coming online?
Sure. Well, the problem is mainly on the west. There's a number of crossings there, some of which will be extraordinarily difficult to actually grade separate at all. St Jude's Road is one that comes to mind, where I can't actually think my way around how I'd fix the problem. The issue is pretty simple, though. At the rail corridor, compare it to, say, to London Underground, our rail corridor is permeable, which basically means cars and trucks can go through it. People are time poor, vans, delivery vans, they will rush to beat the lights. In fact, we watch people drive around barriers at the moment because their time is so important. As the volume of traffic goes up, more of rail traffic goes up, the barriers will be down for longer, the traffic will be queued up for longer, people's patience will diminish, and you actually introduce a risk to rail of people coming into the corridor and smacking into a passenger vehicle. And it's quite different from crashing into a loco to crashing into Auckland Transport EMU. You will do far more damage to the EMU, and you will certainly raise the risk of serious harm and certainly fatalities. The traffic problem, of course, is that when the barriers are down for extended lengths of time, then the queuing goes back through there. So, as I said, the solution is a traffic solution, not a rail solution. But the experience in Melbourne has actually been that when the closures have been done and done properly, they've actually been able to create more of a community and an uplift of property value around the crossing itself. That's been the Melbourne experience in a number of areas, that there is payback. Now, there's some real challenges in Auckland. I went down south on behalf of one councillor over Christmas to have a look at some of the crossings, and it's challenging. It's difficult things to do, but which is why it will take a strong political will to make it happen. It's really easy to close someone else's crossing. I've closed a few in my life, and it's always a battle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to prolong things here, but I do see that this is a fundamental part of this committee's work, where we have the delegation of producing the Auckland Transport Plan, and I would like for us to, at subsequent meetings, have a better or greater visibility on the leadership that Auckland Council need to take on this matter.
Thank you, good point. Final question, Councillor Foley.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. First of all, thank you for making sure that the work that starts at Otahu station has been returned on time on the 20th of March. I know that many of our constituents in Manukau will really appreciate that. My question relates to slide 6. On slide 6, it shows the Manukau branch line work, which will start, I think, in 2025. Just wondering whether that work will include bringing online the Manukau spur, which is something that the people of Manukau have advocated for decades. Kia ora. That's my only question, Chair.
And truth is, I'm not sure what you mean by the Manukau spur, Councillor. Do you mean the turn left to head south?
Yes, so currently you can't train directly from the city to Manukau. You have to go through Poinui or Papatoetoe and then get on a different train because the spur's not connected to the network. But perhaps that's something to take away and think about, because the work's not going to start till 2025 anyway.
Well, you can't turn south from the network, but you can certainly turn heading north from the city into Manukau.
That's because the spur's not connected, but that's...
Yeah, no, and the turn south is something that I don't believe we can achieve. Ports of Auckland have their CT port there and would require a shift of Ports of Auckland to achieve the turn south.
Okay.
We can maybe pick that one up, Councillor Foley.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation there today, Dave. So we've got a recommendation just to receive the update from Kiwi Rail. We've got so it's moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor Fletcher. I don't think there's any discussion. There was a lot of really good questions there, I think, that have teased out about a work. Yes, could we arrange for that to be sent through?
I thought it was already in the pack.
It's in the pack. Okay, it's in the pack, so you can just refer to that. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much for a very informative presentation today. So